In a world that feels kind of shaky economically, all eyes seem to be pointing in one direction, and that's India. And the buzz? It's everywhere. It's this rare bright spot on a fast track to become one of the top 3 global superpowers. So let's unpack what's really going on here. What's behind this incredible story?
But okay, with all this hype, you gotta wonder, right? Is this momentum truly a sure thing? Is India's climb to the top a question of if, or is it just a question of when?
Well, if you ask the Indian government, the answer is crystal clear. As Minister Ashwini Vaishnav puts it, it's a certainty. The only real question in their mind is just how fast it's all going to happen. So let's look at the evidence behind that confidence.
All right, let's dive into the hard numbers. Let's look at the data that's painting this picture of an economy with some serious momentum.
Okay, so take a look at where things stand right now. India is the world's 4th largest economy, with a GDP of $4.3 trillion. But here's the thing, you've got to look closer. I mean, it's already leapfrogged Japan and the UK, and if you look at Germany, well, that gap is shrinking, and it is shrinking fast. And look, this isn't just about how big the economy is today. It's really about where it's going. The IMF, for instance, projects that India will be the world's 2nd largest driver of global growth. It's expected to contribute 17%, which is nearly double what the United States will contribute. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That is a fundamental shift in global economic power.
So the big question is, when does this actually happen? When does India take that number 3 spot? Well, based on how things are going, top economists are pointing to 2028. That's just around the corner. And believe me, this kind of speed doesn't just happen by accident. It's all built on a very clear, very deliberate strategy.
Yeah, like I said, this momentum, it's no accident. It's being fueled by a really specific 4-part strategy from the government. Okay, so here they are, the 4 pillars holding up this growth strategy. First up, a huge investment in public infrastructure. We're talking roads, ports, digital everything. Second, they're focused on inclusive growth. The idea is to make sure this boom actually lifts millions out of poverty. Third, there's a massive push to boost manufacturing and innovation, to turn India into a global production hub. And last but not least, and this one's really important, we'll come back to it, is simplification. The mission here is to just cut through decades of old rules and frustrating red tape.
So, the question is any of this actually working? Well, the data seems to say, yeah, it is. Just look at this chart. You can see key areas in the services sector, like finance and public administration, they're set to grow at almost 10%. I mean, that's the engine room of the economy, just firing on all cylinders.
So, you put it all together and what do you get? A projected real GDP growth of 7.4%. That makes India the fastest growing major economy on the whole planet. It's a fantastic number. But, and you knew there was a but coming, that headline number, it doesn't tell the whole story, not even close. Because as soon as you scratch beneath the surface of that big GDP number, you find a much more complicated reality and some pretty big challenges. And this, right here, this is really the central paradox of India's whole story. You have the 4th largest economy in the world, a $4.3 trillion behemoth. But then you look at GDP per person and it's less than $3,000. That massive difference, it gets right to the heart of the challenge. How do you turn all that national wealth into real, tangible prosperity for over 1 billion people?
I think the Indian businessman Sunil Bharti Mittal put it really bluntly. He basically said, look, a $6 or $7 trillion economy sounds great, but when you're talking about 1.5 billion people, it just doesn't stack up. The real prize isn't just baking a bigger pie, it's making sure everyone gets a bigger slice.
So what's in the way? What are the things holding back that individual prosperity? Well, economists point to a few really stubborn bottlenecks. You've got things like really complicated land acquisition laws that can stall huge projects for years. A justice system that, well, it moves pretty slowly. Then there are rigid labor markets, a skills gap between what people can do and what jobs are out there, and of course, the very real and rising cost of pollution. Each one of these is a major hurdle.
In this chart, it shows you that structural problem pretty clearly. The services sector, it's generating more than half the country's wealth. But then you look at agriculture, where a huge chunk of the population still works, and it's contributing a much smaller piece of the pie. So closing that gap between where people work and where the money is actually being made, that is absolutely critical to making this growth inclusive. So, the race is on, but it's not just a race to grow the economy. It's a race to reform it from the inside out, to actually tackle these challenges head on. Okay, so remember that 4th pillar we talked about, simplification? Let's circle back to that, because this is the government's direct answer to all those bottlenecks we just listed. The entire focus is on untangling this complex web of old laws and procedures that can really stifle business and investment.
And you know what? They're actually making some serious progress. They've already scrapped 1,600 old, outdated laws. And get this, they've eliminated over 35,000 different compliance rules. That is a massive house-cleaning effort to clear the path for growth.
And the results on the ground, they're not just small changes, they're dramatic. Think about this. Getting a permit for a telecom tower used to take 270 days. Now, it's down to 7, 1 week. Or how about this? Connecting a new terminal to the railway. That used to be a 6-year ordeal. Now it's done in 2.5 months. I mean, these are absolute game changers for anyone trying to do business.
So for any global companies watching this, the advice from people who are already there, like the CEO of IKEA, is pretty straightforward. They say, come for the long haul, not for a quick buck. Work as a real partner with people on the ground, and please, try to understand India from the inside, and leave your biases at the door.
So, when you look at all this, India's climb to that number 3 spot, it feels almost inevitable. The math just adds up. But the real question, the much bigger and more important question, is still out there. Will the reforms be deep enough and fast enough to keep up with that incredible growth? And can they make sure that this historic economic rise actually lifts up all 1.6 billion people? Now that is the real challenge. And it's the story the whole world is going to be watching.